...2013 has already seen the launch of some very impressive smartphones indeed, but which one's the best of the lot? Well, to find out, I've assembled 4 likely contenders for some testing on the Emirates airline, which is a cable car that crosses the Thames in London. And first off is a name that actually hasn't been a serious contender for a while, BlackBerry. This is their new touchscreen Z10, and first impressions are it's very good indeed. It's got a 4.2-inch touchscreen, it's 1280 by 768 pixels in resolution. It's got a very sensitive keyboard. It's really excellent, though I'm not sure about its suggestion of the word you're typing above the letter it thinks you're going to type next. It's got 2 GB of RAM, it's got a fast processor, and a very sort of nice minimalist feel, and a good minimalist, elegantly designed interface as well. There are some new touch gestures for it. For example, a curved swipe brings you to the BlackBerry Hub, which is the centre for all your messages. A swipe up from the bottom of the screen, that sort of minimises your app into an active frame. You can have up to 8 of those going at once. And if you swipe down from the top of the screen, it goes into a sort of bedtime mode with a reduced screen brightness and no notifications. There are some new BBM features like being able to share your screen with fellow users, and the expandable memory and replaceable battery mean business. But a camera that's not quite up to the standards of the best and a slight shortage of apps means that it's not quite good enough for top slot yet. Good to see BlackBerry back in the game though. An ultimate phone these days, though, arguably needs to be even more powerful and have a bigger screen. Something like this Sony Xperia Z, which has a 5-inch Full HD LCD. It's an interesting tablet-like design with glass front and rear. What's unusual about it, though, is that it's waterproof. It's actually waterproof down to 1 metre for up to 30 minutes. It's also dust resistant as well. I've tried it a few times in water. It stands up very well. All the sockets and card slots and everything are under flaps around the exterior here. It's got a very good 13 megapixel camera, very good call reception. I like the skin that Sony put on the Jelly Bean version of Android. On the downside, the screen can sometimes be a bit dull, and it's extremely scratch and smudge prone. This looks like a pretty old phone, even though I've not been using it for very long. And it also feels its size, so unless you really need the Xperia Z's waterproofness, I recommend you look elsewhere. I think HTC's One will please more people. It looks absolutely gorgeous with its single-piece aluminium body, and it's slightly narrower than the Sony, which makes it a lot easier to hold. The screen's a bit smaller too, it's 4.7 inches, but it's still full HD, and it's a very good screen indeed, with bright colours and in-plane switching. HTC call it Super LCD. It's also got excellent quality sound through the forward-facing speakers, which give quite a promising stereo effect. They've also tweaked the Jelly Bean interface quite a bit, generally for the best. It's a little bit perhaps oversimplified in places, but in particular the fact they've only put 2 buttons on the bottom. The most controversial feature of it is the blink feed, which amalgamates your own sort of social networking news with news from other sources into a tiled interface you can scroll through. Other home screens, though, are available if you don't like it. Big drawbacks are that the battery isn't replaceable, there's no memory slot for expansion, and I'm not entirely convinced by HTC's ultra-pixel camera. It has just 4 megapixels, and overall you really do feel starved of detail and rather annoyed by the slightly odd colour reproduction at times. It's not bad, but it's not as good as HTC's marketing would have you believe. Samsung's new Galaxy S4 looks very similar to the old S3, but now has a larger 5-inch AMOLED screen, and it's a pretty good one. It also manages to feel reasonably compact in spite of its larger size. The rounded corners, the thin profile, and the way the screen extends right to the edges all helps there. They've also kept an expandable memory card slot and a replaceable battery. A lot of the interesting things, though, with this new phone are what we might call next-generation features. Things like the eye scrolling. The phone picks up your eyes. You can scroll up and down web pages using eye control. Interesting, it does take a bit of practice, and you tend to end up with rather a stiff neck. Also, there's something called direct contact. That's if there's one of your contacts open, you can just put the phone up to your ear and it'll call them automatically. There's also a thing called air gesture. You can sweep your hand across the camera and you can scroll up and down pages and do various things that way as well. Again, something probably more of a gimmick actually rather than something you'll actually use, but it's very interesting to see all these innovations. You suspect by the time the Galaxy S5 or S6 comes round, they may become actually genuinely useful. The camera's a bit gimmicky too. You know, you can do things like use both the front and rear cameras simultaneously and get yourself in the picture of what you're taking, for example. Aside from that, though, it is actually a very good 13 megapixel camera, certainly the best of the four, I'd say. On the negative side, I do find Samsung's interface a bit cartoony almost, and I don't like the fact they've dropped the FM radio. I think both the Samsung and HTC are at the top of the heap. They're both incredibly good phones, but actually choosing between them and finding out which one's best is the most incredibly agonising process. I've certainly been agonising about it. I mean, it comes down to some pretty basic choices in the end. With the Samsung, you've got the slightly better camera, you've got the replaceable battery, you've got the removable storage, all that sort of thing. With the HTC, you've got the gorgeous looks, you've got the great sound, you've got a camera, though, that's just ever so slightly disappointing. Oh, it's not that bad, though. Ooh, I think I'm going to go with the HTC.